Good day, boxing fans. Saturday night at the O2 Arena in the UK in London, it's that time again for heavyweight action when the juggernaut Joe Joyce continues his comeback trail, and this time against the old warhorse Derek Chisora. Is that a fight you're into? Is it a fight that should even happen? Stick around and let's break it down. The juggernaut Joe Joyce was flying high a while ago. He had beaten his local rival Daniel Dubois and had some very solid other wins, the most significant of which was when he knocked out Joseph Parker. Parker in turn is riding high these days with victories over Wilder and Zhilei Zhang. But it all came apart for Joe Joyce when he was stopped by Zhilei Zhang, the big Chinese southpaw. The first one was a stoppage where his eye was banged shut, and the second one was more decisive where he was knocked down and out. And he took those two back-to-back losses against a big bang. Now he's back. His last fight, he laboured a bit to score a 10th round stoppage over Cash Ali, one of those sort of in and out, middle of a range, outside of a top 15 type of heavyweights. And he continues his comeback against Derek Chisora. Now, Chisora needs no introduction. It's hard to find somebody with 13 losses that keep ending up in such high-profile fights. And there's a reason for it, because true to his nickname, he goes to war every time, and he's given us some terrific fights over the years. He's challenged for a world title twice against Vitaly Klitschko way back then, and more recently against Tyson Fury. Wasn't successful, came well short, but he's been around for ages. And the reason why I'm saying should this even happen, you know, Chisora has been in so many wars. He's 40 years old now. Joyce, 38 years old, granted, but you know, he has also been in some wars, but not nearly as many as Derek Chisora. And you kind of worry about the guy's health. You know, Tris Dixon made an appeal after Chisora lost for the second time to Joseph Parker. Yet another war. But I've learned over the years to tell fighters to retire is fruitless. Some of them is just who they are. Of course, I doubt if it can be money. I don't think, once again, there's a fighter with that number of defeats who has made as much money as Derek Chisora did, because you do make money fighting a big name heavyweights, and he's fought almost all of them. It's easier to say who he hasn't fought. He hasn't fought Wilder, and he hasn't fought Anthony Joshua, but for the rest, he's fought almost a whole who's who of heavyweights of the last decade and a bit. Now, sometimes you go to a well, you can't go to the well anymore, and I cringe every time Derek Chisora gets hit. But what of this fight? Because Joe Joyce, he had those two stoppage defeats to Zhilei Zhang. That's a very hard thing to come back from. It's hard for a fighter psychologically to do that. Against Cash Ali, it took him a while to get going, and we know what we've got in Joe Joyce. He's that rare heavyweight thing, a heavyweight with a high work rate and a deep gas tank. He doesn't tend to get tired, and he gets more and more busy as the fight goes on. And he's got heavy hands, like most heavyweights do, and those heavy hands, coupled with a work rate, will make most of his opponents keel over. But on the flip side, he's pretty much stationary. His head is right there in the line. Against Zhilei Zhang, he tried circling away from the southpaw left, but then got caught with a right hook. He doesn't seem to always see the punches coming, and he has depended on his chin. You know, he takes a couple that you throw and he comes back with 10 more. And that's how he got over. And against Zhang, he became unstuck. Now, Derek Chisora, in his last fight against Gerald Washington, he looked every bit his age, and he showed all the wear and tear to me. And I think he's been through the meat grinder. Now, Chisora fights one way. He's not a boxer that's on his toes. He keeps on coming forward. He sort of moves his shoulders, a little bit of a bob and weave here and there. And he keeps banging to the body, throwing to the head, banging to the body, throwing to the head. He always sort of looks like he wants to die in there, but then always when he looks like he's going out, he comes back with more punches, and that's why people like him. In those 13 losses, he's only been stopped 4 times. 2 of them were grind down stoppages against Tyson Fury, and then in the rematch, Dillian White caught him with a punch and knocked him clean out. And way back then, when there were still dinosaurs on the earth, David Haye stopped him as well. But for the most part, he goes the distance, and even when he doesn't, he gives a good argument, and that's why he keeps getting these fights, as I've said. The only people who really beat him decisively, where he didn't really compete, would be Tyson Fury in their second and third fights, Vitaly Klitschko and David Haye. For the rest, he's competed very well, and he gave even guys like Alexander Usyk a very, very tough time. But I think for this fight, if Joe Joyce wants to remain relevant, I think he's just clinging on there at the bottom of some top 10s. But if he wants to remain relevant and have a career, he obviously has to get past Derek Chisora. And I think he's got to do it in impressive fashion. He's got to get Chisora out of there. And for Derek Chisora, I think his one chance is that overhand right, because that's a punch that Joyce gets hit with repeatedly, and it's a punch that Chisora does throw well. You know, that overhand right found Joyce's face time and time again against Cash Ali, even against Carlos Takam. Many people bounced that punch off the face of Joe Joyce, and he could walk through it, with the exception of Zhang. But that is Chisora's only hope, in my opinion. He doesn't have a stamina of a gas tank and as big a work rate to consistently outwork a guy like Joe Joyce. That's not going to happen. He hasn't got the speed and the footwork to outbox him. He's not a Joseph Parker, and that was Joyce's best when eventually he got to Parker. So he's got to throw that overhand right, bang the body, and hope for the best. Now, what do I think is going to happen? You guys tell me in the comment section, who do you think wins this? To me, it's sort of a foregone conclusion. It'll be a big upset if Derek Chisora pulls it off. But if Chisora is very competitive, or it becomes a sort of a pedestrian decision win from Joe Joyce, it's not going to look good for Joyce. Joyce has to go in there and get Chisora out of there. And I think that's what he's going to do. I expect Chisora to unfortunately take punishment again. He will land his right hand against Joe Joyce. Everybody does. But, you know, you're going to have to be some real special puncher for that one shot to get Joyce out of there, unless his jaw was still cracked from Zhilei Zhang. And any heavyweight hits hard. Chisora hits hard, but he's not that bang one-and-done heavyweight puncher. So I don't think he's going to be able to get Joe Joyce out of there. And if he can't do that, I can't see him winning. So I just think Joe Joyce is going to outwork him, and is going to grind him down to a referee stoppage of a corner, pulling him out somewhere around between rounds 8 and 10, I think. Let's say Joe Joyce TKO 9. So that's what I'm thinking. I hope Derek Chisora comes through it unscathed, and Joe Joyce for that matter. I don't like seeing guys going on that long past their career, you know. I don't know what it's for. That can't be for the money, can't be for glory. He's clearly not going to be the heavyweight champion of the world. And he gave us some great fights, and I would just like to see him walk off into the sunset with enough of his health intact that he can enjoy his money. But it's boxing. It's a cruel game. That's what I think. Please, guys, remember to share. And thank you to all those who subscribe. Please consider doing so if you haven't. And until I see you again, remember to keep those hands up.